to the webinar on the new sectoral methodologies for the ACT initiative. So maybe before we start, for your information, this webinar will be recorded, and in order to be available in a short time on our ACT website. And before we start, I propose also to introduce the panelists for today. So I will start. I'm Edouard Fordrin from ADEM, which is a French agency of ecological transition. And so I'm involved in the ACT initiative in two ways. The first one is the methodology development of this initiative, and the second one is the implementation of ACT initiative in France. I will continue with Alice.
Thanks, Edouard. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice de Palma. So I work at CDP, and I'm also on the ACT team, and I'm working on methodology development. I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you, Alice. Maybe Marlène to continue.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Marlène Dresch. I work at ADEM as Edouard, and I work as a methodology developer for the ACT initiative.
Esther?
Hi everyone, I work at CDP and work on all things ACT at CDP, including the methodology development.
Thank you. Dua?
Hello everyone, my name is Dua Zara, and I work as a technical officer at CDP, supporting the development of sectoral methodologies. Thanks for joining.
And to conclude, Anaïs from ADEM.
I'm Anaïs Gabardin, working at ADEM on the methodology development as well.
Okay, thank you. So the agenda for today. So we introduced the different speakers for today. We will present you the ACT initiative and how does ACT assess climate performance of companies. That's the first step of the presentation of the webinar. The second discussion will be about the role of the technical working groups we want to set up in order to develop the ACT methodologies, and we will be clear with the benefits of joining technical working groups. And the third step of this webinar is about the new methodology scope and timeline to develop the ACT methodologies and how to join a technical working group if you are interested. And of course, this is a webinar, so to conclude, before the conclusion, we will discuss, and you will be able to ask your question, and we will give you answers. So for that, do not hesitate. You are all muted, so do not hesitate to use the chat box or the Q&A box for the question. So what is ACT? ACT is an initiative which means assessing low carbon transition, and it's a joint voluntary initiative developed by CDP and by ADEM at an international level. It's an initiative which is funded by Europe and especially EIT Climate Kick, which provides funds in order to help us to develop this initiative. The objective is to provide an accountability framework and methodologies in order to assess how company strategies and actions contribute towards the Paris Agreement mitigation goal. So in order to stay well below 2-degree warming. For that, we propose ACT assessments, which are based on qualitative and quantitative indicators and qualitative and quantitative data in order to assess the low carbon strategy of company. The ACT initiative is also sector specific in order to cover the specificities of the business sector due to the fact that climate issues are not the same from one sector, one business sector to another. And ACT is a rating system, which is a final score made up thanks to three components. But before the presentation of the ACT initiative, why we wanted to develop ACT for companies, the first point is urgent action is required in order to reduce our GHG emission. If you look at the graph on the screen, clearly, if we want to meet the Paris Agreement objective, it's not enough to be on the track of a reference technology scenario, which is based on a business as usual plus national determined contribution plus recent trade. So it's not enough, and we need to reduce in a drastic way our GHG emission, which is represented by the curve in gray, in order to meet Paris Agreement objectives. So in order to reduce our GHG emission, companies need to develop strategies, low carbon strategies, in order to transition. And for that, in order to help companies to develop those strategies, we developed the ACT initiative in order to allow companies to work on this topic. Second point is the context of the COVID-19 crisis. So this crisis is huge and is with a lot of negative aspects, but it could also be considered as an opportunity to change the world, to change our habits, in order to make progress on environment and in order to avoid potential future crises related to environment. So for the moment, there are a lot of discussion and statements on how to integrate new criteria on recovery plan for companies in order to help them during this crisis, and to add criteria on environment and climate topics. And so ACT is also a method that could be used in this context in order to help companies to be on the right track for the climate aspect and the climate transition. And last point about ACT context. ACT, as I said, ACT is a sector-specific approach. So we already developed some methodologies for different sectors. So we developed a methodology for auto manufacturers, electric utilities, retail, and the building sector with the constructor and real estate. We are currently finalizing 3 methodologies about oil and gas, transport, and cement. And this is the topic of the webinar today. We want now to develop for the rest of this year, we want to develop 3 new methodologies about iron and steel, agri-food and agriculture, and a generic ACT methodology in order to cover all companies which cannot benefit of an ACT sector specific methodology. And for the last step of the methodology development, we want to develop in the future, so next year, an ACT methodology for the glass sector, for the chemical sector, for pulp and paper, and to conclude for the aluminium sector. In order to go deeper in ACT and to give you more information on how does ACT assess the climate performance of a company. So an ACT rating is based on 5 questions about all related to climate transition. The first one is, what is the company planning to do? The second one is, how is the company planning to get there? The third one is, what is the company doing at present? The fourth one is, what has the company done in the recent past? And the fifth one is, how do all these plans and actions fit together? So with those 5 questions, we want to cover the dynamic of the company in terms of climate transition, low carbon transition, and we want to cover the past, present, and future performance of the company. And so at the end, we have a score, which is divided into 3 parts. The first one is a performance score between 1 and 20, which represents the alignment of your low carbon transition with the Paris Agreement goal. So we have 9 modules in order to assess the performance score. The first one is about targets. So we consider and we assess your targets in terms of GHG reduction, and we assess if the targets are compliant with low carbon pathways which are relevant for your sector. So it's quite similar to Science-Based Targets initiative for the people who are familiar with. But the added value of ACT is to consider also the actions and means which are implemented by the company in order to achieve the targets. So that's why we have a look at the material investment in order to be sure that your assets you invest on are compatible with the low carbon transition. We have a look also at the intangible investment, which cover the expenditures in low carbon R&D. We have a look at the performance of the products you sell on climate, and we consider also how the low carbon transition is managed internally of your company. How do you manage this low carbon transition with your supplier, with your clients, and also how do you manage this in a public way with a public engagement. And the last module for the performance score is a business model, and we assess if you are thinking about new business model for your company, which are relevant and compliant with the low carbon economy. The second score is a narrative score between A and E, which represents a summary of the whole assessment. So we consider 4 criteria. The first one is an assessment of the business model and the strategy of the company. The second is a consistency and credibility of the low carbon transition strategy. The third one is about your reputation on climate topics and climate issues. And the fourth one is about the risk of transition for your company. And the last score is a trend score, which is the trend for a future ACT assessment. If it's a plus, we are able to say that you will improve your ACT performance. If it's a minus, you will decrease your ACT performance in the future. Or if it's equal, we consider that it will be the same in the future. To conclude with 3 slides to conclude with the ACT initiative and the ACT methodology. So we use different concepts of assessment in order to assess and to provide a score on your low carbon strategy. The first concept is relative to quantitative assessment, and so we use, for example, the commitment gap, which compares your targets here in green in the graph to your specific company's benchmark, which is in gray in the graph, which is derivated from the sector benchmark in red in the graph. So if there is a gap between your target and your specific company's benchmark, so there is a need to improve the definition of target. If there is no gap, of course, it's a good point, and that means that your targets are aligned with your low carbon transition. We look also at the achievement of your previous targets. We look also at the low-key emission, which are emissions which are related to your assets. And so we assess if you will spend in the future the carbon budget you are able to spend in order to not to exceed the carbon budget of the sector. And so we use a lot of quantitative concepts in order to measure and to assess your performance and your alignment with the low carbon transition. The second concept we use is a qualitative assessment, and for that we use maturity matrices for this concept. So for example, here you have the maturity matrix for the business model module, which considers 4 criteria: the profitability of the business model, the size of the business model, the potential growth of it, and the schedule for the deployment of this new business model. And you can see that we have 3 levels of maturity, basic, advanced, and 2-degree aligned. And we position, thanks to your data, we position your company inside this maturity matrix to give you a score on this module of business model. So it's an example of qualitative indicators we can have in ACT assessment. And to conclude with the ACT methodology, so and the link with other initiatives, it's very similar and complementarity to SBT, to Science-Based Targets Initiative, because we use also the sectoral decarbonization approach to model and to define the company pathways according to the sectoral scenarios, low carbon scenarios. And another link with another initiative of CDP is the fact that for an ACT assessment, we use a lot of questions from the CDP questionnaire in order to be complementary and not to have duplicates between those two initiatives. So it's not the same assessment, but we use questions from CDP questionnaire in order to assess your low carbon strategy with the ACT initiative. I will now leave the floor to Alice in order to present us the different new methodologies and the benefits of the technical working groups we want to set up in order to develop the methodologies.
Thank you. I'm just going to take back presenter right so I can move the slides. Right. So that should be moving. Let me know if it's not.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So Edouard talked about why the approach of the ACT initiative is important and how it can be of use to you in developing the climate strategy for your sector and for your company. So now I'll talk about the role that you can play in the first step towards the low carbon transition in your sector, which is being involved in the development of the sectoral ACT methodology. So the aim of the ACT process is and of the methodology development is to produce a methodology that allows us to assess the climate performance of companies while taking into account the specific context and activities of your sector. Edouard mentioned that a couple of times. We look at various different sectors and we make sure to take into account the different context of each of these. So that's why we have one methodology per sector. And in order to develop this methodology, we can't do that without the help and input of the experts in the sector, who are all of you who joined the webinar. And in order to compile that feedback and that input from the experts, we've created these technical working groups. So you can see, I'll just move on to the next slide. So here we've highlighted where the technical working groups fit in terms of the methodology development process, and also within the overall ACT process. So the sectoral expertise is necessary to make the methodology relevant to your sector, but we also need to make it globally applicable. So we want it to be relevant to all geographies and all sizes in terms of distribution of companies and different sizes of companies as well. And to create a robust methodology to get that first step right in order to assess companies, we need your input from all of you. So in terms of the process, so this graph shows you, wait, I think I need to go to the next one, right. So this graph shows you the methodology development process that we follow. And how it works is that the ACT team will develop a draft methodology and will present the methodological choices and suggestions to you during these technical working group meetings. Marlon will talk a bit about their meeting frequency and some of the logistics later on in terms of their meetings. But yeah, so we'll kind of present the work that we've done so far and present it to you during these meetings. Within these meetings, we'll also gather your input. There'll be some space for discussion, and we'll also gather your feedback and integrate it until we get a draft of the methodology. We'll also hold regular consultations So these are outside of the meetings, and they give you a bit more time to kind of collect your thoughts, have a look at the document, think about it a bit, and you can provide some comments through. So we use the separate software where you can enter comments on different sections. And one of the other way in which we gather feedback is also through a public consultation, which is at kind of the final phase of the methodology development process, which is once we have a methodology that everyone in the steering committee and technical working group is more or less happy with, and then we'll open it up to public consultation and share it as widely as possible. And in that case, everyone is welcome to input in it, and that is everyone as it's external to the technical working group as well. So that is just to highlight that the technical working group really is a central component of the methodology development process, and your input really is valued and taken into account as we progress through the development of the methodology. So in terms of who should join the technical working group, the ACT initiative takes a multi-stakeholder approach. We want to encourage all types of stakeholders working in the sector to join our technical working group and to offer their perspectives. So ACT focuses on assessing companies, but these different perspectives are essential in order to make a robust methodology. So that's why all of the stakeholders that are listed in this in red are welcome to join our technical working groups. And I mean, even beyond that, we might have missed out some stakeholders. So you're also more than welcome to share the opportunity within your networks if you know of anyone that you think would be of interest to. We also value geographical diversity very much, as I mentioned earlier. So we are aiming to have a global methodology that is applicable everywhere. And we want to have also organizations working in different parts of the value chain. So who from your organization should join the technical working group? Ideally, you would ask someone with relevant technical expertise. If you're unsure, feel free to join our first technical working group meeting, and you can always pass it on to another colleague afterwards if you feel like they are better suited. So it doesn't mean to be one single person the whole time. It can be multiple people, or you can really pass it on. So don't hesitate to join the first meeting for yourself. Right, and then moving on to the benefits of joining the technical working groups. So the first benefit is to help us review and enhance the ACT sectoral methodology. So you will bring your perspective and help us develop a methodology that meets the challenges of your sector. So again, taking that specific context into account. So we'll make sure, thanks to your experience, to kind of bring that in and integrate it in the methodology and within these specific indicators that Edouard presented earlier. So the second benefit is to exchange with peers and improve your climate strategy for the climate strategy of your company. So that means that you'll have a space to share best practice and to showcase just the commitment of your sector towards the low carbon transition and meeting the objectives of the Paris Agreement. And you'll also be able to network within the technical working group. So you'll have all the stakeholders active within the sector that will be represented. So there will be space for discussion, as I mentioned. Then the third benefit is to enhance the visibility of your company. So you can really kind of showcase your company being part of the ACT technical working group and working on the fact that they're working on their climate strategy and want to be involved in the development of methodology in their sector. It's an opportunity to have your company's name and logo showcased on our website. And finally, we'll also mention all of the companies and stakeholders that are participating in the technical working groups as part of all of our media outreach and general engagement, and you'll be invited to speak as well during our ACT events. And finally, this is another good way to know any ACT-related news. So we do have a road test phase after the methodology development that will allow companies to road test the methodology and get an ACT assessment done. So you'll get information on that. And you also receive information towards doing your own ACT assessment. Great, so I think that is all for me, and I will pass it to Marlene to talk about the scope of the 3 sectors that we are working on. Marlene, I'm just going to give you presenter rights so that you can change the slides yourself.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So we'll now focus on the scope of the 3 methodology developments. So, yes, you can see the next slide. So we'll start with the methodology for iron and steel sector. So what do I mean by scope? The scope in the ACT methodology is the companies that will be assessed by the methodology, in fact. So the scope is not the companies or the entities that we want to see in the technical working group. As Alice explained, the technical working group is broader than that. We want stakeholders from all the value chain. They are welcome in the technical working group, but we have to focus on, for the methodology, on the sector. And here for iron and steel, we will focus on the manufacture of basic iron and steel, the manufacture of products of first processing of steel, and the casting of iron and steel. So I put on the slides NACE and ISIC code to be clearer. Obviously, as it is iron and steel methodology, it will not consider non-ferrous metal production. It will not consider the downstream, I mean the manufacture of fabricated metal products, and it will neither consider the upstream, which is mining. Here is for the iron and steel methodology. Let's move to agriculture and agri-food. So the scope for this methodology is, on the one way, agriculture with plant and animal production, and on the other way, on the other side, agri-food industry. The scopes, it's the same for iron and steel methodology, will have to be refined in the technical working group. That will be one of the jobs of the technical working group. For agriculture and agri-food, we are conscious that there are 2 different sectors. So we will have at the end probably at least 2 methodologies, one for agriculture and one for agri-food industry. But as they are in the same value chain, we wanted the same technical working group because the discussion will be the same about agriculture when thinking about agriculture or thinking about agri-food industry. So we didn't want to have discussion twice, so we chose to have the same technical working group for both sectors. So the scope for agriculture and agri-food does not cover the downstream, that means retail and catering. And for agriculture, it does not cover forestry and logging because it's not linked with food, and hunting and trapping because hunting and trapping are very particular sectors. Let's move to the generic approach. The generic approach is a particular sectoral methodology, and I will explain it to you by reminding you of our goal. We want that all companies can be act assessed. So we started on the left of the slide by developing sectoral methodology for high-emitting sectors. So 14 methodologies will be available. Some are already available, and some will be available this year or next year. But what if your company does not belong to one of the sectors? So we have to cover all other sectors, and there are a very huge amount of sectors in industry, in services. So we have to develop a generic approach, which will be a bit different, which will be a tricky challenge, I think. But we need to have this generic approach to assess all the other sectors. And this generic approach will be used also for another tricky point, which is the multi-activities companies, the conglomerate. What if my companies have electric utilities, work in electric utilities, transport and telecommunication, for example? You can be assessed on the sector of electric utilities. You can be assessed for transport. You can be assessed for telecommunication using the generic approach, but you still have three ACT scores. So how do you aggregate these scores to have just one score for your company? So the generic approach will give the answer to this question and will give a method to aggregate the different ACT score for multi-activities companies. So now a word about the technical working group timeline and structures. Here is the schedule for iron and steel methodology development. What is important on this slide is what is written in bold. So as Alice has already said, there will be 5 technical working group meetings. This technical working group will be remote meetings, except one face-to-face meeting, and we hope that the COVID-19 crisis will allow us to organize this face-to-face meeting. We are experienced in conducting remote meetings. So it can be very participative meetings with specific tools to vote, to brainstorm, etc. So it's not really a problem that the meetings are remote ones. So the first technical working group meeting will be in June and the last in November. And the consultation of the technical working group will be after the second technical working group and the third technical working group. And the public consultation, Alice talked about a bit earlier, will be in October and will last 1 month. The schedule for agriculture and agro-food methodology development is a bit the same. It will start at the beginning of June. It will end at the beginning of December, and and we will have the consultation of technical working group in July and in September, and the public consultation in October. For the generic methodology, as you understood, it's a bit different. So it will not be really a technical working group. It will be replaced by an advisory committee. The advisory committee will have less than 5 meetings. The generic methodology is not sector specific, so in the advisory committee we will invite business association, climate organization, and possibly conglomerates, because you remember that the generic approach will allow to agglomerate act scores for conglomerates. The methodology development process will be faster than for other sectors. For other sectors, will end of November or beginning of December. It will be earlier for the generic methodology, and the public consultation period will be extended, probably 2 months long, because as it is not sector specific, it must be available for a longer time to allow all the people to give feedback and inputs for this public consultation. If you're interested in the generic methodology, you will have also to sign up through the form in the terms of reference, and we'll keep you updated on progress and on detailed schedule of the generic methodology development. So it's nearly the end. We wanted to have a word about the role and the responsibilities of technical working group members. So you will participate in around 5 technical working group members. So as I said, one meeting will be in person and the other will be remote meetings. You will have to dedicate about 6 days over a period of 6 or 7 months to prepare the technical working group meetings, to provide feedback, to review draft methodologies and deliverables presented to the technical working group, and to provide inputs and suggestions. You're welcome in the technical working group with a constructive spirit, because we need you to improve the clarity of the methodology and the scientific or technical references of the methodology, because as Alice said, we want a methodology that meet the challenges of your sectors. You can suggest other representatives who have relevant sectoral technical expertise or business strategy expertise. You must endeavor to support strong climate mitigation ambition. As you understood, ACT is linked to the Paris Agreement, and so we will have to meet Paris Agreement goal. And last thing is that you agree that the technical working group play an advisory role, and that it will not approve the final draft of the methodology. CDP and ADEM will finalize the methodology, but we truly want to have a consensus around the methodology. So let's part how to participate in the technical working group. And to recap, so if you want to help assess climate strategy in your sector, if you want to contribute your expertise and share best practice, if you want to understand the global climate performance indicators in the ACT methodology, if you urgently want to act on climate to close the emission gap, well, the next step is to participate in the technical working group. So you can sign up to join our technical working group, and you can share the information about this opportunity within your network. So to sign up, it's really easy. You have to go on the ACT Initiative website, on the participate sheet. You open the relevant sectoral terms of reference, you fill it, the form, you send it, you email it to the right person before the 22nd of May, and you will be part of a technical working group. So that the end, I think, yes, of the presentation. Feel free to ask any question. If you have question now, use the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen. And if you have question afterwards, you can get in touch with us. You have all our email address here and our photograph also on the next slide with smiles. So thank you for your attention, and we are waiting for your questions.
Thank you, Marlène. Thank you, Alice, for the presentation. I can see questions in the Q&A box. The first one is about the meetings, the technical working groups meetings, where they will take place for the physical one. Maybe Alice or Marlène for this question.
I can answer if you want. Physical meeting will take place in Paris or in London for agriculture and agri-food, probably in Paris, because it's a place you can reach easily, London as well. And for iron and steel, perhaps it will be a physical meeting in the east of France or in the east of Europe. We will try to have the opportunity to visit the plant during the technical working group. So perhaps it will not be in Paris.
Thank you, Marlène. Another question from Stéphanie Leouérou about the scale of the ACT initiative, and maybe I will answer this question. ACT initiative is an international initiative. Clearly, it's developed by ADEM, but also by CDP. And the objective is to be able to provide methodologies, a framework and methodologies to assess low carbon strategy of companies all around the world. So we did it for, as I said, for other sectors, and for each of them and for each of the future sectors, we want to be able to assess international companies. That means French companies, European companies, international companies. So clearly it's an international level, and that's why the first step, for example, is to study and to identify the low carbon benchmarks which are relevant in an international context. After we divide and we specify the benchmark into different geographical areas, for example, Europe, China, etc. But it's important here to be able to assess in an international context, because some companies are international in their activities. Do you have any other question about ACT initiative, about the technical working group process, or about the scope we want to cover with the new 3 methodologies?
I see question in the chat box,
Yeah.
Edouard. I
Okay.
don't know if you see the question. The question
I don't see it, so maybe you could go ahead.
So it's from Annie Eaton. The question is, how will you consider the fact that primary steel makers also make cement? Will you incorporate this into the sectoral CO2 trajectory? Well, I can go through this one. When we developed the methodology for iron and steel, it's to assess iron and steel activities of the company. So this methodology will not be used to assess cement activities for the company, because we also have a methodology for cement. And so we will not incorporate this into the sectoral CO2 trajectory. The sectoral CO2 trajectory will be for iron and steel, as we had sectoral CO2 trajectory for cement in the cement methodology. Hope it's clear.
We have another question, still from Stéphanie Leroux, which say, I work for a French subsidiary of a German group. Does it make more sense if colleagues from Germany applied? Maybe Alice, do you want to go through this question?
Sure. Sorry, can you repeat it?
It's a question. So the person works for a French subsidiary of a German group. Does it make more sense if colleagues from Germany applied to the technical working group?
I guess it depends on who you think is the best suited in terms of technical expertise. I would say where people are based doesn't matter too much. I mean, ideally, it would be people that, I was going to say that work maybe internationally. If there is a branch like that in your company, that might give them kind of a larger perspective in terms of information that they can bring back to the technical working group. But it might not be the case for everyone. So I would say it probably just depends on who seems to be the best suited in terms of technical. But I don't know if Edouard, Marlene, you've got any other.
No, just to say that of course I agree with you. Just to complete the answer, the ACT assessment is an assessment for the group. So clearly it's important to have the good people from the group. But as said by Alice, it's clearly technical meetings on how to assess low carbon strategy of companies. So clearly we need to have people with expertise on this topic in order to make progress and to have a first consensus with the ACT methodology in order to have a robust methodology at the end.
If I could just add something to that as well, Edouard. So,
yes.
Hi, this is Esther from CDP. What we've seen in the other methodologies is sometimes within a company, we'd encourage whoever joins the technical working group to do a bit of internal consultation with their colleagues with different areas of expertise. The ACT assessment is a holistic assessment. We don't only look at kind of just that, technology implementation. We also look at strategy, investment, and so on. So we'd hope that whoever joins the technical working group, whether it's from a regional branch or kind of the global group, they're able to have those relevant conversations. And I think provided we don't have over-representation from a specific company, we'd be happy to have more than one person from a company join the technical working group. Generally, we try to limit to 2 representatives just to enable a good balance of participants. But we're seeking people with interest and capacity, and I think that's just as important as your technical knowledge and where your office is.
Thanks, Esther, for this answer. Another question from Christine Journet about agri-food methodology. So as you mentioned, Marlene, there will be two methodologies for agriculture and agri-food. Does it mean that the first one will focus in what happens in farms and the other in plants? So I don't know if Marlene, you want to go through, or maybe I'm this.
Yeah, I can answer. I think there might be a little confusion about it, since it's not two methodologies for agriculture and food industry. That would be one methodology for agriculture and another one for food industry. So we are not going to disentangle the livestock and crop productions. We are going to have both aggregated, but it's definitely going to be one methodology for agriculture and another one for food industry.
Okay, thanks, Anaïs.
I missed a question from Annie Eaton in the chat box, Edouard. I read it to you. You said you want to invite participants for many different stakeholder groups. Will you require that there is a representative of each stakeholder group in the technical working group? I'm not sure to catch the point. But I would say that
the question is,
yeah.
is it necessary to have the representative from each stakeholder group in the technical working group? So, for example, if we can't find an academic for a technical working group, do we stop?
Okay. No, we'll not stop the work, but we will try to have we will try as hard as we can to have a representative of each stakeholder group. And sometimes the research field is missing, for example. It's a shame, but it's a fact.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't see question in the chat box, only on the Q&A box. So if there is some question in the chat box, do not hesitate, Marlene. I don't see any other question in the Q&A box. So I guess it's okay for everybody. Maybe from colleagues from CDP or ADEM, do you want to add something about these new methodologies? Or is it okay for you?
I'm just going to add something. Oh, sorry, Esther. I can see another question that I just wanted to answer very quickly. So there's a lot of text, so I'm trying to summarize it very quickly. But I think we've got one attendee from the Energy Management Committee of the Bureau of Indian Standards, asking, if I understand correctly, whether they qualify to join the technical working group. I mean, I would say please do sign up through the terms of reference, as you can see on the slides here. It seems to me it's quite unlikely that we do want to include as many people as possible, but within making sure that it's within the scope and that it's relevant. So we will definitely get in touch with you and maybe have a discussion if we've got any questions, or if we want to, if there's anything that we're unsure about. But I think that would be the best process to follow. To just follow the steps, sign up through the form in the terms of reference, and then we'll get back to you in terms of joining the technical group. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thanks. I can see another question about the cost for the technical working group meetings. A person wants to know if someone can sponsor the travels for physical meeting. Maybe Marlene, you have the answer.
Yes, we have a little budget to sponsor some travel for physical meeting, and we I don't know from where the person is, but we have the budget. We try to help first academics, but we can use this budget for other people as well. Please get in touch with us and we will discuss.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Marlene. I don't see any new question from the attendees. I guess it's the same in the chat box, so don't hesitate if I miss something. Okay.
So it's okay in the chat box.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can't see anything else either.
Cool, thanks. So if it's okay for everybody, I propose to close the webinar. So thanks for your participation, thanks for your questions. So now you have all the information about the ACT initiative and the new methodology which will be developed for the new sectors. Do not hesitate to go on our website, which is available on the screen. Do not hesitate to contact us directly if you have some new question. Of course, the presentation and the video will be available on the Agro website if you want to forward or to have a look after the webinar. And if you are interested, do not hesitate to complete the sign-up form before the 22nd of this month. Yeah, that's it. Maybe a last word from colleagues from ADEM and CDP, but personally, I'm looking forward to working with you inside the different technical working groups for these new 3 ACT methodologies.
Yes, just the same for me.
Yep, same from CDP side, and we would encourage you to reach out if you have any questions at all.
Cool. So I propose to finish and to conclude. So thanks for your participation, and so thanks to all the panelists for the presentation, and hope to see you soon, quite quickly, for the ACT initiative. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.